When do I start IBC? Welcome to the Durham Talents channel, where we're digging up buried talents with the infinite banking concept as conceived and described in R. Nelson Nash's book, Becoming Your Own Banker. My name is Jesse Durham. Welcome to the channel. Let's talk about when to start the infinite banking concept, when to start implementing this idea into your household, your business, your investing, whatever it is that you are already doing. And let's do it with a saying that I commonly reference, and that is, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. And the next best time is today. I now sincerely think about that with me, because if you haven't had this thought yet, just know that it's very common for me to hear when someone catches IBC, when they arrive at the decision to begin IBC, it clicks, they get it. They'll commonly say, I commonly felt in the beginning, oh, why didn't I know about this 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20? I'd love to have known about this years ago. So if we can recognize that and relate that to how Nash would talk about forestry, and again, that's why I don't mind using that idea of planting a tree, because it does cause us to think long range, but it also applies to the start, the beginning, the genesis of just vetting this idea of the infinite banking concept, of becoming your own banker. What about, because again, if this is your first video, if this is the first time that you're considering or hearing about the infinite banking concept and considering whether you can, should, would apply it to your life, how about walking? When did you decide it was the appropriate time to want to walk? Now, I know that's before we were having conscious thoughts, but if you'll bear with me through some other examples, I believe that we will arrive at pure desire. You know, when we were infants and we saw others walking, we just wanted to walk. So we did, and we just tried and stumbled and fell over and over and over again in a much simpler approach than perhaps we do many things as adults. So that's kind of funny, but a great learning point, I believe. How about riding a bike? When did you decide to start riding a bike? I'm guessing, like myself, it was before you knew how to ride with no hands, or to stand up on the seat, or any other number of tricks that I've done or that you've done or that we would have thought about doing. We just knew that we wanted to ride a bike, and maybe we just kicked off one day and we did it in that first day. Maybe we tried several times before we learned. Maybe we put ourselves on a hill. Maybe someone gave us a push. Whatever the case may be, exactly how you've come to IBC, whether somebody referenced you to the concept, whether that was Nash's book or this channel or from me directly, or whether you've been actively searching for financial information yourself and you've come upon this idea and come upon this channel here. Well, regardless, I think that it relates to riding a bicycle. We just knew that we wanted to ride a bike, and we tried it and we worked at it until we could. What about swimming? So again, I'm not trying to bore you with these analogies, but I am trying to think of some real life examples that I believe directly relate to the concept of wanting to, desiring, the impetus coming from oneself to do a thing, whatever that thing may be. Practice the infinite banking concept, ride a bike, swim, what have you. Let me give one more example. What about courting? Some would say dating. I, as a father of a precious little 1-year-old at this point, I've arrived at using the term courting, and I would use that term with my wife, whom I courted for several years before we got married. We knew each other young. What about before courting? To be sure, I didn't know as much then as I do know now, and I know now probably not enough. about the opposite sex and relationships with them. But I knew that I wanted to know more. And then in particular about my wife, then just a friend in that young age. I knew that I wanted to know more. I knew that I wanted to spend time together. I knew that I wanted to speak more to get to know better. Now, some practical things that I can ask are, have you read R. Nelson Nash's book, Becoming Your Own Banker? I mean, there was the guy who wrote the book on the infinite banking concept. His name was R. Nelson Nash, and his book is called Becoming Your Own Banker. It's not my book. I didn't write the book. I'm simply the beneficiary of someone who was encouraged to pick it up and read it, and I did, and I've reread the book. So have you read the book? Have you read his second book, Building Your Warehouse of Wealth? Have you watched his seminar that is on CD and such today? You can actually go to www.infinitebanking.org to the official Nelson Nash Institute website to be able to see all these materials, his first and second books, his audio material, everything there. So have you done your legitimate research, again, consulting the man, the book, to be able to find out more about this infinite banking concept right from the source? Have you watched the information that is out for free on this channel, where regularly, weekly, in fair depth, I would say, we are covering the nuts and bolts of how to vet, practice, expand on our knowledge of the infinite banking concept. And at that point, let me say that, because Nash said it, that more is caught than taught. Can you read and reread his book? Yes, and I would encourage you to. Can you listen to all the audio information, his seminar and such? Yes, and I would encourage you to watch the information on this channel. Absolutely. To be able to have a conversation? Absolutely. Set up a webinar? Set up a phone call with me? Sure, absolutely. But Nash would say, and I do as well, that more is caught than taught. We arrive at a point, just like with riding a bicycle, where we see the bicycle. Maybe we watch someone else ride the bicycle. Maybe that person told us some key points about how to get started ourselves. But ultimately, we have to have the desire to want to get started. Sure, we can hear that information, see that information, but ultimately, we're going to catch on to what it is to move our person through space on the vehicle of a bicycle by getting on the bicycle and pushing the pedals and steering and such ourselves. All these different things that we would have to learn by experience. So what I'm trying to describe is not blindly going into anything. Being well aware enough to know that you want to do something, anything. And yet there's certainly no way to know everything ahead of the experience, or at least not in the same sense, to be sure. More is caught than taught in bike riding, and more is caught than taught in practicing the infinite banking concept. So it would be completely natural to still have questions, to still have a desire for conversation, examples, anecdotal experience, sharing that. Again, just like watching someone else riding a bicycle and listening to them talk about their experience. That's very, very valuable. It's not the same as you getting on the bike and riding the bike and experiencing the freedom of that kind of different motion from walking and running and such, and the breeze in your face, and the effort of going up a hill, and the ecstasy of riding down a hill, and all these different, the challenge of turns and doing the thing for yourself. So certainly more is going to be caught than taught, but you'll still have questions. Again, even though you get on the bike for the first time, it doesn't mean that you're ready to Evel Knievel do jumps and flips or whatever it may come to you later that you would want to attempt. Okay, so more is caught than taught, and yet you can learn and watch and listen. So there are these two ends of the spectrum, I suppose, and somewhere in the middle where you want to implement the infinite banking concept, and yet you still have questions. That's where I started at. I mean, if I were to relate some of my experience, I was encouraged by a friend to see a live presentation because there was one not too far away for me to be able to drive to, drove an hour or whatever to be able to see a presentation. From that, I was encouraged to read Nelson's book and also set up a subsequent phone call to be able to ask questions. And I asked some questions on the spot as well. So what I'm saying is it didn't take me 5 years to figure out that I wanted to become my own banker. It's the most simple thing. Nash says it in his book. It's the most simple thing. It's becoming your own banker. Now, those 4 words do have a lot of depth to them as well because they embody what he called a paradigm shift. Okay? So it's becoming, that implies a process, a continuing, never-ending, in my opinion, process. The emphasis is on you for every aspect of this, as it should be. Banker, of course, we can learn more about that. So through his book, through the presentation, again, it didn't take me 5 years for me to arrive at the knowledge that I wanted to become my own banker. But that did lead to more questions, conversations, reading and rereading his book, watching material, listening to material, absolutely. But getting a policy as well. And it didn't take me 5 years, it didn't take me 1 year. It didn't take me very long at all to know that I wanted to get on my path, to start my journey of becoming my own banker. And I did. And really, it didn't take me and my wife, 6 months or so before we realized that even though what we started with our first policy was significant premium for us, it was imaginative for us to think of a number that big for us at the time, and it was a significant amount of premium that we had decided to pay to start this privatized banking system for ourselves. But it still didn't take 6 months or so before we knew that we wanted to be able to provide her with a death benefit as well, get a policy on her. We did need to have coverage, but also that our thinking had expanded even in those 6 months from us paying significant premium and accessing the capital in that policy for the things that we wanted to do at that time. It didn't take us those 6 months to realize that we wanted to add to our system. We wanted to add to our ability to accommodate for our need for finance in our life even then. So I don't think that it's going to take forever to be able to vet this idea. I mean, Nelson's book, it's 92 pages, it's large print, and it has big illustrations in it. You can make your way through it very quickly. His second book, very, very palatable, very readable. So all of his material is there. All of the information that we put out on our channel here, it's at your fingertips, free. And let me plant the idea here now, so that it's already there, that serious numbers, when we get to that point in you vetting the idea of becoming your own banker, and we get to the point where we do talk about numbers, that's not where I start. That's not where Nelson Nash started. He started with philosophy, he started with the human problem, he started with the principles of the infinite banking concept, as do I. That's where my emphasis is in sharing, in promoting the idea that you can become your own banker, are the principles that it takes to do so and to do so successfully. And yet when we do get to talking about your numbers, because a policy should be structured in a way to accommodate your need for finance now, but also in the long range, thinking, yes, long range for you all the way to your retirement or passive income years, but intergenerationally in mine and Nelson's way of thinking long range. And those serious numbers will probably raise some eyebrows, cause some interesting conversations to happen. But that's how you know that they're serious numbers too, because those numbers should be stretching your imagination while also being reasonable and logical for you in whatever your situation may look like. I know that my wife and I had some interesting conversations ourselves when we were arriving at what we thought our premium should be to accommodate what it was that we were doing and planning to do. So the case will probably be the same for you, I would imagine. And then ultimately, it's all conversation until someone writes a check. That's one of my favorite sayings that I've heard in the past several years. It's all conversation until someone writes a check. And I don't mind the conversation. You probably don't mind the conversation while you're vetting this idea. But ultimately, we could look at a bike. We could watch a bike. We could preview someone else enjoying the process of riding a bike. But until we get on it, the experience is not truly ours. And the same is true with the infinite banking concept. It is all going to be just reading and conversation until someone writes a check. And that will be, again, reasonable and logical for you and your financial footprint. Remember this. When we know what's going on, we will know what to do. Let me know where you're at in your process of vetting this idea of the infinite banking concept and considering, when do I start? Are you reading the book? Are you watching the channel? Are we already in a dialogue? Are you asking questions? Let me know in the comment section, or to carry on one-on-one in figuring out how to implement the infinite banking concept into your household, your business, your investing. You can reach me at 828-817-4223, or you can email durhamtalents@gmail.com. This has been an absolute pleasure for me. I look forward to our next conversation. Have a great day. Take care. I completely lost my train of thought right there. There were so many layers. I got lost in them. Okay. I shouldn't have said that anyway. It's like, in closing. Sound like a Southern Baptist preacher. 30 minutes later.